Okay, the first thing that you need to do to set up for your simple distillation is to get all the pieces of glassware that you'll need. Some of these are in your drawers and some of them are in the hood, and there's a couple that you'll need to get from the blue bins that are on the cart. So we're going to start with, you're going to use your largest beaker in order to make the hot water bath. Then you're going to use a 100 milliliter round bottom flask. When you get it, make sure that there's no cracks that are within the surface of the glass. If there's a little crack, it'll sometimes look like a star. If that's the case, show the TA or show me, and we'll get you a new one. So we have the round bottom, then we have our distillation head, we have our thermometer adapter with the rubber piece, and it's key to have the glass and the rubber piece together. Then you'll need a thermometer. When you get the thermometer, make sure that there's no bubbles in the alcohol, in the green or blue alcohol that you're using. You'll need 2 rubber bands. Then the condenser. The condenser can either be the thin one or the larger one. It doesn't matter for this experiment. Then what we have is, this is the vacuum adapter that'll go on the end. You'll need to get a couple of boiling stones. Boiling stones are very small pieces of, in this case, a rock material. They'll provide the boiling, a smooth boiling, and if you don't add these, then your distillation is likely to boil over. And later on in the semester, you're likely to have a fire. So you want to make sure you always add boiling stones to the round bottom flask. And then finally, you'll need something to collect the distillate in. In this case, we'll just use a beaker. You could use a graduated cylinder, but just something to collect the glass, to collect the distillate in. And then finally, you'll need some Teflon tape, because we'll be using that to put the joints together to basically lubricate and prevent the joints from leaking. And then you'll need a clamp, and the clamps are found in the hood so that you can clamp. And you'll only need 1 clamp for this distillation. So those are the pieces that you want to assemble first, and then we'll show you how to put it together. Okay, before we assemble the glassware, we have to look at we have to do something with the ground glass joints. Now, in your apparatus, this is what's considered to be a ground glass joint. It's polished, smooth, and there's a taper. And what the ground glass joint allows is for the apparatus to basically fit together smoothly so that there's no leaks. Now, we can't just put glassware together because over the course of the distillation, the glassware might seize and it's really difficult to get apart. Plus, there can be leaks because this isn't a smooth finish and it's not perfectly sealed. In your lab book, they talk about using grease or some sort of lubricant here. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to use Teflon tape this semester because it's easier to remove. And if you have grease, it's really difficult to clean the glassware, and eventually all the glassware just becomes coated with grease. So the first thing is that we have a male ground glass joint and a female ground glass joint. Okay? If you don't get that, you can ask somebody. What we need to do is we need to take Teflon tape and put a layer of Teflon tape on all of the male ground glass joints. So what we do is just simply take the Teflon tape, roll it so that we get 1 layer, and then simply break it off. And so what will happen is that when we assemble the glassware, now this will sit in there. You can sometimes give it a little twist, and that'll hold it snug in place. So we need to put Teflon tape on all of the male ground glass joints, and that's going to prevent leaks, and it'll allow us to take the glassware apart at the end. Okay, so that's the next step in the process, is to put Teflon tape. If there's already Teflon tape on the joint, then don't worry about it. You can just go ahead and use it. If it looks like the Teflon tape isn't on there very good, just take it off and put a new layer on there. We got plenty of Teflon tape. Okay, now let's assemble the simple distillation apparatus in the hood. And what I like to do is I like to build it from the ground up. And so the first thing I'm going to do is place my hot plate in position, and I'm going to put my hot water bath beaker on the hot plate. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to position the round bottom and then build off of that. So I take my round bottom and I add my clamp and I clamp that. And this is the only clamp I'm really going to need for this distillation. I'll tell you why in a few minutes, why I don't like multiple clamps. So I'm going to clamp my round bottom in position. I'm going to take a few boiling stones, just 2, 3, 4 of them, and throw them in the round bottom so that I don't forget to do that. And now I'm going to clamp the round bottom in position. And so I want the round bottom to be basically like so. And I'm going to put hot water into the beaker, and that's going to be my hot water bath, and that's what's going to heat my unknown organic liquid. So now what we're going to do is once this is on tight, I'm going to go ahead and build from there. So I'm going to take my distillation head, and I'm going to put that in position. Then I'm going to take my thermometer adapter, and I'm going to place the thermometer inside of the thermometer adapter. And so people will, by the end of the semester, if you're not careful, people will come up with all sorts of creative ideas on how to use this. And basically, you're going to take the glass part, put the neoprene adapter on there, and then you're going to carefully push the thermometer down through that. And then that will sit here on the distillation adapter. And the question is, how far should I push the thermometer down? And the thermometer should go down in this position where the top of the bubble of alcohol, what would traditionally be mercury, should be below the turn, so that the entire bulb of the thermometer gets condensed or gets covered by vapors, and that'll give you the most accurate boiling point. So we can push it down a little bit further here, but we want that top of the bulb to be well below the turn. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a rubber band on here, and then I'm going to place my condenser on there, and I might have to just twist it a little bit to get it to go tight. I have to multiply wrap my thermometer, and the idea here is that the rubber band will now hold the condenser in place. The Teflon tape will not glue the ground glass joints together, and so I have to have the rubber band to hold it in place. And if I give it a little twist, I want to make sure there's no air gap here, so that when the vapors start to come up the distillation head and then go into the condenser, that I'm not losing any vapors here. In this experiment, that wouldn't be an issue, but in other experiments, if you have vapors leaking, you could end up with a fire. So we want to make sure that this is nice and tight and that our rubber band is in place. Okay, the final piece is to take the what's called the vacuum adapter, and that goes on this side. So we'll kind of give that a little twist, hold it in place, take my rubber band, and the rubber band will now be held in place. So you only need one clamp for this entire procedure. If this clamp is on tight, then the rest of the apparatus will be held in place, and you don't need another clamp. Sometimes people like to put a second clamp and hold this in place, or a second clamp over here. And my issue with that is that sometimes this clamp will pull that joint apart and allow the vapors to escape. So in general, I like one clamp and let the rubber bands and the Teflon tape hold the joints together. I would then take my receiver and place it there, so that now basically I have an intact distillation apparatus. Now, the next thing that I need to do is I need to attach the cooling water. In our efforts in Organic Lab to be sustainable and green, what we have is we're going to use a recirculating pump, which is found in the back of the hood. That has a pond pump that will basically recycle ice cold water into the condenser. There's two, it splits in two so that the person working on either side of the hood has a cooling water source. And so what I would do is I make sure that this joint, this stopcock is closed, which it is now, and then I would fill this with 50% water, 50% ice. I would then take this water line and I'm going to place it on the bottom. And I'm going to try and get that snug. So what will happen is the water will go in the bottom of the condenser and out the top. Okay, so that's the first connection that we have to make. And so now I had to go get another piece of tubing, and so I'm going to place the return line, what we call the return line, on the top, and then position it so that it will sit inside of the container, so that now when this is filled with water and ice, the water will basically, once I open this stopcock up, then the water will flow throughout the condenser. And what you have to realize is, and before we use these water recycling system, we were using gallons a minute throughout the lab, and we've basically reduced that to a gallon of water or so for the entire period, and actually for the day. So this use of these recycling systems has cut down on the water use in organic lab. So once that's connected, the water, I can turn the water on and it will go in and out. Make sure these are on tight. Make sure that there's no leaks. Never put your notebook, your cell phone, a textbook, anything valuable in the hoods, because if one of these lines leaks, the hood will fill up with water, and you don't want to flood your notebook, cell phone, textbook, whatever else is in there. So make sure these are on tight. And so now we would be ready to fill this beaker with water. Turn on the the hot plate to the appropriate temperature. But before we do that, we should probably we would place our liquid inside of the round bottom. And the easiest way to do that is to basically grab a plastic funnel. Once this is assembled, we would go ahead and we could simply just take off this apparatus and kind of sit it there like that. Put our plastic funnel there. We would then pour in our unknown liquid into the round bottom and then reattach the simple distillation apparatus. And now I'm ready to put the hot water bath in, start it heating, and do the distillation. So that's how we set up a simple distillation. In the lab, after you set it up, you probably want to, the first couple times, get the TA or myself or Dr. Simmons to check it. And what we're going to look for is going to make sure there's no leaks here, there's no leaks here. We're going to make sure that the thermometer is in the proper position. And we're also going to make sure that the apparatus is relatively stable here so that halfway through the distillation things aren't crumbling and falling apart. Okay, so that's how we set up a simple distillation. Thing you want to do is get the glassware together, get all your joints taped, assemble it, and then you can go ahead and attach the cooling lines and go ahead and then put the water into the round bottom.